We lost the biggest sum in property we've ever lost in our first ever deal.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a nightmare. And the day we got accepted change down, Brexit happened. Literally the same day. Well, that can't be that bad. And essentially what happened over the time, we lost our deposit. So we lost a 6-figure sum. But what I would say is probably the best thing that's ever happened to the business.
You are an architect by background, a developer with a passion for unlocking London's hidden potential. They're talking about Labour wants to build 1.5 million homes.
Look, headlines are great. Where last year London each provided 90,000 homes. They provided 30,000. Is it going to happen? Yeah, but it needs to happen now. Committees have to go, right? So we've had schemes that are fully supported by the council. You know, they're like, this is exceptional design. I don't like design. Yeah, but you're not a design expert. You can have an opinion that gets voted out.
So what is the best bit of advice that you've ever received?
I've got a question for you. So a lot of developers make the massive mistake.
This episode is sponsored by Merry Oaks Property Finance Brokerage. Merry Oaks is a finance brokerage for investors, developers, landlords, SMEs across the country, helping you with all of your finance needs. So whether it's bridging, development, commercial, buy-to-lets, HMOs, service accommodation, industrial, hotels, the whole 9 yards, whether it's for your portfolio, whether it's for your business, we can support you. Please contact us. We've got the link in the show notes and we look forward to hearing from you. Now, back to the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Property People. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by somebody I've known in the property industry for quite some time and is doing some of my favorite stuff that I see and I follow on Instagram and stuff. Very, very cool developer, Mr. Adam Dainow. How are you today?
Thank you. That's a great intro.
I've got a little bit more because I want to tell everybody a little bit about who you are. You are an architect by background, a developer with a passion for unlocking London's hidden potential. As a co-founder and director of Caswell and Dainow, you've transformed overlooked plots, gardens, garages and infill sites into high-quality homes that enrich communities. Which one of them is in a stomping ground which I know and like and love, which is Hackney Wick, a little cool little site you did there, and the rest of it. I'm absolutely a massive fan personally of everything that you do. I think it's all design-led with the commercial acumen to be able to really get it sustainably, doing it again and again and again. So I'm excited to talk everything property, land, planning, development with you. But before we go into all of that, I always like to know a little bit more about who you are and in particular what type of person you were at school.
Interesting.
Were you a studious person? Were you a rebellious person? Did you enjoy school or hate it?
Interesting. I actually loved school. I think I loved learning and I loved, I remember like meeting new people, making new friends. I was something like I really enjoyed. I think like primary school, especially, some like the happiest memories of my life, I think. Like just, learning every day. I don't think I wasn't the cleverest person in the class. There was always someone cleverer than me, but I was always like, top 10% maybe. Never like number one, never like a genius. I think at secondary school, similar probably. The first few years, I think there's a weird transition when you go from primary school to secondary school. Like, you're kind of well known at primary school, So then you get to secondary school, you're nobody, I was a skinny little
big fish in a little pond, then the other way around.
Kid, nobody, and like you think you're relatively clever at primary school. And you get to hundreds of kids, you don't know who you are, what you are. I always remember the first few years, probably a bit cheeky. I wouldn't say naughty, but testing boundaries. Education wasn't like the number one. Had very supportive parents, I think, pushing it through. And I think that probably a big difference was when you actually got put into sets like top, middle and bottom. I got put into top for everything. And weirdly, I think that was the best thing that happened to me because, you go from being in your form where you just get distracted by the naughty kids. Yeah, you want to be cool, you want to be naughty, and actually you get put into this top group and everything. You're like, well, these are like, who are these people? I don't even know these people. These are all like really studious, kind of traditionally clever kids. Actually, I'm on the same level as this. And actually, I think that was really good for me because it pushes you more. And I started to be a bit more serious over the last few years. And I think there was a point where you get to choose your subjects. I'd always liked certain things. And then when you get to choose your GCSEs, I was like, this is a joy. I got to do, remember like doing graphic design.
Yeah.
I was like, and I just found it like, it wasn't even like, it's just like, wow, this is amazing. Getting to learn about these designers and draw things and then got to choose business studies. And I was like,
I did
it's
this.
just like, it's not even a lesson. It's just like so fascinating and like human geography about cities. So I think when I got to the older years, like that's when I really got good at school. I think like, I'm not very good at doing stuff I don't enjoy, but when I enjoy something, and I remember I came out, like I was a bit cheeky. I like to push boundaries a bit, and I wasn't the best sort of revising stuff, but I did get straight A's, and my teachers were quite surprised.
Right. I was going to say, because you sound like you weren't at the top. Were you getting A's and B's? But you get straight A's. I
got straight A's, a couple of A stars, and like gave me the confidence, I think, really from that to like keep going. But I think for me, it's about having a good friendship group around me. I think when I got into the older years, in the younger years, I was probably hanging around with some of the wrong kids, to be fair.
Where'd you grow up?
In the West Midlands. I went to a proper state school, where like, like your class is mixing with like, some pretty interesting characters, you've got to learn how to navigate these things. And I think the older I got into a slightly better crowd, and I think that's massively important because I think as a teenage guy, it's so easily to be influenced.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said your parents were supportive.
Yeah, like so lucky. Like I wouldn't say come from like, there's always people with richer families than me, but I think, having like a really supportive, loving parents is for me massive. Like having that like care and like, help with your homework and like, no matter how tired your parents are from work, they want to help you. And also having parents that really believe in you, no negativity. Like, no, you can do it. You can achieve that. You got to just knuckle down. You can do it. And I think for me, that's really important.
I agree. I try to do the same with my daughter. She just turned 5, and I like try to be there as much as possible. Obviously, we've got life and we've got work and you've got other things that get in the way. But and that's what I had. So I'm kind of like trying to keep it going in our family. Now, straight A's at GCSE, A levels.
Yeah, I think A levels. Went to a place called King Ed's, and it was like you had to like have certain grades to get in. It happened to be at the end of my road, which was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, it was good. I did like, what did I do? Got business studies, geography, art, and politics. You definitely need half an A level too. Great, like saying again, like getting to choose what you love doing. Like it's just amazing.
So you did history.
No, art. Sorry. Geography, art, business studies, and politics.
That's a good mix there. Nice little kind of like
it's a good mix stuff, because it's also about the people you mix with, right? Because the class of your people in politics is literally, there almost might be a different species compared to your friends who's doing art with you. Do you know what I mean? Like they're just polar opposites, and then you're someone who's got to like try and make friends in the politics class and try and make friends in the art class and the business class. And even there's massive life lessons,
That's quite the mix. I did sociology and economics, which was, not subjects that you do at GCSE or earlier. And I found that the people that were in that class as well were quite different. And when you're doing, but you see, one of the things you mentioned, there's a thread there, which was you like the graphic design and you're doing art as well. And then you went on to become an architect, or you went at least to go and study architecture at university. What was it about that was kind of more appealing than, let's say, becoming a politician or?
Do you know what? I think architecture is like a kind of a balance of like the arts and a bit of seriousness as well at the same time. You're not going like completely like becoming an artist or textiles, whatever it is. So I think it's like a real good like in between. And I think also studying architecture is quite a broad subject. People think it's just about buildings, but it's really about like people and places and solving problems. So I think to get on an architecture school at a good university is quite hard. And if you can do that, in theory, it opens up a lot of doors. Now, in practice, I'm not too sure whether that is true anymore, to be honest. But like in theory, it should do.
How long ago did you qualify as
So I'm 42 and, I finished my master's at 25. So, you do a 3-year degree. Then I did 2 years working in practice in London and Manchester for a year, my friends. Then you do a 2-year master's. So your whole thing is like 7 years. And it seems like a long time, but it's not. I mean, like undergrad architecture school is amazing. It's a new world, you thought you were okay at school and you get to this place and, you're like, actual like geniuses, like people who just like wow, like their way of thinking is like something I've never really thought about. So it it really broadens your horizons. And architecture school is like, it's a bit out there. There's a lot of creativeness in the studio. Then there's the real essays and all that type of stuff. And it's hard work. You work in long hours, late nights in the studio, but you're also working in like a really fun environment with loads of your friends. So you're not in the library, of a book by yourself. You're kind of working in teams and in group projects and like trying to solve and design. So socially, it's like a brilliant course.
And what's the, like, when you're solving these or working on these courseworks and stuff, are they real life examples, or you've got to come up with like abstract stuff on your own? So
like it starts off easy in undergrad, like here's design a house for someone, and then it gets more theoretical. So like then you'll have like problems. And so I went to Sheffield University, and it's very like socially
Sheffield's
based.
a good town for university.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's very much like some universities might be more about like towers and like the structure behind it. Sheffield's about definitely like social politics of an area. So you might take like a town, like a small town that has a problem with crime, or not enough people doing a certain thing. Then your building is trying to bring people together, like socially, and then also like design wise, it's got to be contextual, and then it's got to work, and it's got to be something really beautiful, and then you've got to learn how to design and create spaces and be buildable, that type of stuff. And you get all these amazing tutors you get to work with, and like lectures, and it's just like opens your mind to like a way of seeing the world that I'd never really thought about in that way.
Because the way I always see architects is kind of like there's two breeds. There's ones that'll do your 3-meter extension at the back of your house because it's, well, now it's in the PD, but it's, it's just for your family owner. They've got 2.4 children and they just want to do a little wraparound extension or a little side extension or something. And then you've got the ones that will go out there and really kind of push the envelope and do some larger scale stuff and kind of more in line with what you're doing now, I guess. So how like what do you think it is that some people go down that way and some people go down the other way?
It's like the drive, I think, like I guess studying architecture at a really good school, the people who are going to get into that school are normally ones the most drive. And then also like who you hang around with on that course, right? It's 100 people in undergrad first year. 20% don't make it, 20% quit in the first year. Then you got the 80% left. Then you kind of get into groups of all similar interests, liking the same thing, or social beliefs, or, architecture beliefs, or whatever. So I think it's definitely about drive. I think I'd say a lot of my friends are pretty senior in some really amazing practices or have their own practices. And I think that's who you kind of associate with at university, right? Like it's just who you get on with, I think.
So what was it about you that gravitated towards the kind of stuff that you're doing now? And give us an idea of the journey from going from graduating to actually starting to do your own developments. This episode is sponsored by Merry Oaks Property Finance Brokerage. Merry Oaks is a finance brokerage for investors, developers, landlords, SMEs across the country, helping you with all of your finance needs. So whether it's bridging, development, commercial, buy-to-let, HMOs, service accommodation, industrial, hotels, the whole 9 yards, whether it's for your portfolio, whether it's for your business, we can support you. Please contact us. We've got the link in the show notes, and we look forward to hearing from you. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long journey. I mean, I think going back to that, so when you do architecture, you do a master's. So then you go back and do 2 years. And I think at master's level, you really get to like double down on what you're interested in. And I was really concentrating on housing and land then. So I was like about basically what my idea was then was like how big supermarkets like Tesco could create housing on top of them, which kind of happens now. So my whole thesis project,
metros and all that,
So my whole thesis project was about designing these massive Tesco's, these beautiful houses on top. And I really got inspired by the economics of land and how it works, like quite an early age. And then I left university and moved to London, little stop off in New York on the way, straight to London. And then I kind of was, well, there's a couple of things that happened actually. I really wanted to get back into architecture. So you've done 2 years working in practice as what I call a part one architect. And you don't really know anything, but it's amazing, right? You get working on these really cool projects, you're getting taken to site, trendy Shoreditch, working these things. Then you finish your masters, it gets a bit more in the real world, you've got to get into, a bit more senior in architecture practices. So I started off doing that, I went to work for a really small architecture practice called Matthew Woodthorpe Architects, super high-end stuff in Holland Park. There's literally just 3 of us. And, you know, you're kind of learning on the job, really, because university teaches you a lot, but it also, there's a hell of a lot it doesn't teach you. Yeah. You know, reality of when you get into practice, like, you're not that valuable. But maybe my value was quite a good design instincts, pretty good with clients, and quite a good business nous about things. But I was never the best person doing drawing packages. You know, like a lot of architecture work is sitting down, grinding out hours of complicated details and drawings on CAD. That was really never my forte. And I think my best bosses I've ever worked for have recognised that. And I've been very much like client side facing. So for a couple of years, I went to some amazing practices. But I also use that to test ideas. I guess the other thing to note is that when I went back to university to do my master's, I didn't want to rent a house, so I wanted to buy a house. So basically, when I did my years in between undergrad and masters working in practice, I was saving up money. I went back to Sheffield University, and I realised the only house I could afford would be ex-council. But then I realised next to university, there was where the arts tower we studied, there's these ex-council houses, which really no students ever, it wasn't a student area. But I learned and looked at a few, and I realised there was a plan of one of them. And it was a 3-bed, and the classic, I was like, I can take out the kitchen and make it into a bedroom. And then the finances worked. And I put the smallest I lived there, and I rented 2 rooms out to friends. And my friends took the mick because the kitchen I put back in was literally the smallest kitchen. Like, you could literally, like, you know, I'm talking like a few units.
And it's still at uni, though?
Still at uni. So I went to do my master's, and all my friends were renting. And I was like, come and see my house. And that summer, to kind of do the house up, I went and worked in a practice in Sheffield for a few months, and then I'd come home in the evenings and do up this house. I didn't have a clue. I literally didn't have a clue what to do. There's no, you know, YouTube. It's like, had like these books of DIY, made loads of mistakes. I remember one time, like my friend who I was renting a room to, like, text me saying, Adam, you need to come home. He's like, the skirting boards are attacking me.
What?
Because I didn't realise you had to, like, I put all these skirting boards on, I just hammered them into the wall. And like 2 days later, they all started coming off the wall. Didn't realise you had to, like, do it properly. And, you know, like, kind of winged it. Like, I had, like, no money at all, like, a tiny little budget. But I knew if I got it right, that I wouldn't have to pay rent for my whole master's.
Wow.
And I got it right. And I didn't pay rent for my whole master's for university, which was massive effect. And another couple of things happened during my master's that I think affects where I am business-wise. Is that when I was in my last few months at university, so as an architecture student, you create these beautiful drawings and you pin them up on the wall for crits. I always noticed over the years that, like, these students, you finish and then you put these drawings away hidden. No one ever sees these drawings, but you've spent like months and months of your life on these, like, it's like pieces of art. So I had this idea that maybe people would buy these. So when I left university, I set up my first ever business, which was called Dainow and Dainow, as a theme between business names. I can't think of any of my ideas, not very creative. And the idea was to find the best architects' students' drawings, edition them, so get loads of prints of them, hire art galleries, have a big opening night, and then sell them for a website. That's what I did.
Wow, do you actually?
Yeah, that's what I did. So I randomly went and thought I'd go and live in New York for 3 months, and I ended up being a club promoter. And every day, in the daytime, I'd work on this business plan, and I'd be emailing architecture students and trying to work it all out and creating thousands of spreadsheets. I got back to London, I had these 15 architecture students all signed up on this contract of mine, and I chosen all their drawings, and I hired an art gallery in Brick Lane for 2 weeks. Like literally with every penny I had this big opening night, sold quite a lot, thousands of pounds of art.
Wow.
And then, you know, sold art. And that's what I did.
Became an art dealer.
Yeah, I became an art dealer. I didn't really know anything about art, you know.
Yeah.
But I did that whilst working full-time as an architecture practice. So it was a lot, you know, it was like...
And also doing the club promoting as well.
Yeah, that had gone. That was just like a little part-time job.
What made you want to go to New York out of interest?
I went for a wedding, and I just thought, I may as well live here for 3 months after, because you couldn't have visa.
I did the same. I've done it in my career. It's great.
And like for me, I'm like, my biggest inspiration is like cities, like new cities. And every day I'd go and find a new restaurant or coffee shop in a new area of New York and just work on my laptop. It's kind of what I do now, really. And like you get so much inspiration from like seeing the realness of a city. And I think for me, like having this kind of, I guess, art online gallery business, financially, I don't think it was successful. Like I didn't lose money overall, but I didn't make any money, I don't think. But I learned some like
pretty lessons along the way, right? With
pretty strong lessons of like what I'm good at and what I'm not very good at.
And you know what? For me, I hear more and more about architects and architecture school, and it's similar to what you just said, which is that you don't really learn a lot about doing architecture at architecture school. There's a lot of concepts and theories. Nowadays, because when you went to university compared to nowadays, people are coming out with like massive student loan debts, and the interest rates back when I was doing it, I think we're exactly the same age. The interest rate was in line with inflation, 1%, maybe 2% or whatever. And now it's like crazy. They're like 7s, 8s, and 9s. I'm starting to hear about. So with taking on and 7 years as well, it's not like a 3-year degree and you're done. For architects that are thinking about doing something similar, going into that profession, or want to get into the development side and want to have kind of that real knowledge of how architecture works to get that kind of get that edge on their competitors. If somebody comes and tells you basically, I want to be an architect, do you encourage them to go to architect school?
Do you know what? It's I think back at this actually, because the same conversation. I remember when I was told my dad was going to study architecture like years ago. I can remember something really vividly. He'd been on holidays and he came back on a plane. This is 25 years ago. He said, "Adam, I sat next to an architect and I told him what you were going to go to study." And he said, "Don't do that. There's no money in it." So I vividly remember like that 25 years ago, like this random guy on a plane telling my dad that. But my take on it is this, is that like if you want to go and study architecture, you've got a certain mindset, right? You're probably not like the person that goes, "I want to go and work in the city and my main goal is trying to make as much money as possible." Yeah. Like you've got other things going on in your mind, right? You've got like a kind of sense of doing something good for society and a sense of design as well as hopefully making money. What I would say, though, is doing the undergrad architecture 3-year degree is amazing. But then making the decision to go and spend another 4 years of your life, essentially, getting to become an architect, that's a tricky decision. Because on paper, it doesn't financially stack up. Yeah, right? If you look at the salaries and the debt now, however, if you are in the 1% of talent, right? Getting on architecture school, it's not easy. You've got to be pretty... good grades to get on it. But maybe if you think in the 1 or 5% of those people, you can make some serious money. But God, is it hard? Is it hard? But like, there's a tiny percent that do very well.
But it's like every industry. Like, you want to be a footballer, you got to be a film star or whatever. It's like, do you really want to go into? You're better off maybe being an estate agent. Or something.
But it's a passion, right? And that's what you got to remember is that when you go and do something creative, whatever it is, often you're doing something because every day in theory you really enjoy what you're doing. When it's other jobs.
That's the ultimate.
I know people who do other jobs, and let's say they're selling, I don't know, water bottles, for example. They can make some serious money. But like on your weekend, are they like going like, wow, that was just so inspiring?
Starting salary for an architect, they're saying like 40, 50 grand or something. But then if you're coming out of debt with like 100 grand behind you, it's like, and then by the time you pay tax and all, there's not much left after for it. So you really got to have a massive passion for it.
And the 40 and 50 is someone in London, and that's probably done a few years after university, to be honest. Like when you're just fresh out of uni, like and it's tough. But look, I still believe in architecture. It's been amazing for me. But I think one thing I think I've probably been quite good at, and my business partner Charlie, is like, you've got to know when to jump off. It's a very slow trajectory in architecture, like do this, and you get promoted, then you get promoted. But you've also, I think some of the more entrepreneurial architects now are doing different things, right? They're studying architecture, but they're going to work client side. So maybe they're working for a housing developer or a design agency, and they're the only architect in that company. Yeah. And they've got more oomph about them then. So, or they're getting into film or, other things, products and restaurateur and whatever they get into. I think that design background and that problem solving, critical thinking Like part of architecture is you get roasted.
Yeah.
Like you will spend months of work on a project. You go and pin it on the wall and you stand up, and your peers, the whole idea is they've got to criticize everything you've done. And that's it. You got to stand there and like learn to really like understand like you got to be able to take criticism and like learn from that. And like that is such a useful tool in life, having that education.
It is. And then for different people, like they can work up a ladder, they can start their own architecture practice, but you've gone a slightly different route and gone down the development route.
Yeah, and I think you know what's key is that in architecture, I've never really worked for one practice my whole life. I've done like 2 or 3 years, learned a lot from my directors, and been like, all right, I want to go somewhere different, and kind of small, big, medium. And I got put into like quite senior roles, quite young, you know, quite good with clients, quite good at design. And I got, you know, I got to a pretty good architecture salary really for my age, and I became an associate director really young. And I got given lots of responsibility, and I got to learn loads about business and design and branding and all sorts of things, as well as just architecture. But I think I pushed myself to not just do traditional architecture. I was doing other things within offices because I realized that I needed to know about that. But I think a key decision I always made was that I always looked at my bosses, and as inspiring as they were, did I ever want to be that person? What they did every day as a job, was that what I wanted to do? And it wasn't. But what I loved was working with property developers that would come in. And it'd be like, wow, they've got a cool job. Like they're the ones all the architects are like fanning around. Like, I've got to get this right for them. They're making the decisions. They're buying the sites. They're making the proper money if it goes right.
Well, yeah.
And it's kind of like, wow, this is quite like, wow, I love this. I love this kind of risk taking. And so from an early age, I'd always tried to learn about property development. Like evaluate, like reverse engineer things in my head, create spreadsheets, like ask loads of questions, annoy my bosses, like ask so many questions about stuff, become friendly with the developers, try and understand the economics behind it. And then Charlie, who was one of my best friends at undergrad at architecture school, we probably had very similar ethos about, look, we love architecture, love design, but like property is probably where we want to get into. And we kind of realized that 2 heads are better than one. And I think one thing I would say is one lesson I did learn from having this kind of online art gallery business when I was young. It's so hard making decisions by yourself. Like you might make the right decision, but then you might second question it, or you sometimes just get paralysis about like don't know which one it is. When you got a business partner, it speeds things up so quickly. Just having that second opinion on things,
I agree,
is brilliant. And also, you know, there's a lot of things I don't want to do in a business, and finding someone that does want to do those things is absolutely amazing. And like having someone that pushes you on as well. Like, you know, we can all be a bit lazy. Oh, I'll do that Monday, do it next week. But having a pretty, you know, he's probably the most, I think I'm pretty driven. I'd say Charlie's probably, you know, more on it than me.
Wow.
To a certain degree, you know, he's like time scales, like, you know, bang, bang, bang. And having someone like that, like I don't want to say on you, but working with you, like we're both pushing
working
each
alongside,
other. Like Charlie knows I'm pretty driven. And I think having 2 of us like trying to like push each other up is massive. Otherwise, when it's by yourself, sometimes you can be paralyzed and like overwhelmed by everything. And sometimes you just go, I can't deal with this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, you know, the 2 heads are better than one, double the pleasure, triple the fun. My dad always says more partners, more problems. But ultimately, the way I see it is if you've got like a running mate, it's somebody that is like says driven as you, that you can go on this journey together. You kind of both want the same outcome, and then you find out what strengths each one's got, and it spurs you on. And I think it's hard to find that good.
Yeah, and I think that's where it comes back to really, you know, like you, I go and we meet. We have lots of businesses that approach us wanting to work with us, so we really get to see directors of companies. They present to us all the time, and you know, sometimes they're how can I put it? They run a really good business, but then I look at them and go, are they friends? And I think we're so lucky that we're really good friends, because it's stressful, right? There's some bad things that happen in business.
It does.
And you've really got to be able to have a laugh at the same time.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, like, you know, being able to just have a laugh about stuff, you know, and call each other up. We speak each other like one or two, even if we're not over each other, we'll speak each other 1 or 2 times a day on the phone. And I think, you know, for me, like, I want it to be fun. We all do tough jobs, right? And I want it to be fun. And I think when people choose their business partner, I think sometimes they how can I put it? You've really got to know the personality behind the scenes. And going to university with someone is the best way of that, because, like, you know, you got drunk with them. You know, you've seen how they're like. Are they going to still go to work on hangover? Or are they going to, like, not do any work for a week? And what I would say about Charlie is, like, he was probably the hardest worker in undergrad. Now, I'm not saying he was the best designer, Charlie, but you'll probably say he was probably the hardest worker. And then, you know that work ethic. And I think when you study with people, it's the best way to decide who you want to do business with. You know, you see the warts and all of people, you know.
No, I agree. I think it's a very beautiful thing when you get to meet a business partner, because, as they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with somebody. But finding that right person, and then finding them, because normally you've got to invest the time to be able to get to know their character. And a lot of people jump in. You hear all these JV stories and stuff, and, like, they always go, not always, but a large percentage of them don't. They either don't last or they go horribly wrong. One of the two. So if you found that, I'd say you're one of the few blessed people, I must admit. And
I think maybe I was trying to think, like, obviously we've known each other for 10 years before we had a business together. So, like, keys are maybe living together and going on holidays together. So maybe that's what they got to do if two people who want to go into business together.
Advise
go
them.
on holiday for a week together.
Yes,
like, really see that person, right? Really see how their personality is, like, in the highs and lows of a holiday. And that's when you know if you should go into business with them.
Completely agree. Now, at what point did you both decide, right, we're going to do Caswell and Dainow, this is it, we want to, and then what was the first deal that you worked on together?
Organically, it started off in our part-time. So working architecture practices, you know, full on our evenings and weekends, we wanted to get a property to live together in. We were renting. We spent a year trying to find the perfect place, which was something with a double height space, something with an area we knew was going to do really well, and something with a massive square foot where we could completely start the plan again. We annoyed every estate agent because they send us so many properties. And they literally, I remember one estate agent one Thursday night in Dalston saying to me and Charlie, just going, like, you are not going to find what you want. Like, you guys are too picky. And we did. We found what we wanted in Hackney Wick. And it was the, you know, through, like, every weekend and every evening, kind of just being on it, right? Trying to work out figures, look at places. And I think it's so important, you know, to anyone starting in business and property, if you can find your first place to make money on, you know, you get you get a normal residential mortgage, right? You got a joint salary. By myself, I couldn't have afforded it. You know, you can do some of the work yourself, you know, all the painting, all that stuff. So I think we both learned, Charlie also bought a house in Sheffield to do up. So we both learned a little bit. We bought a house, you know, we did well on it. You know, it made some money. We took some money out. And then we looked for our next project. And then we're like, okay, what can we do? What can we do? And we found a flat. I went to see it and I thought that could be split into 2 flats. So we bought it. But really, we didn't have a clue about, like, they've got to go and get the freeholder, right? You can't just do that. You've got to pay the freeholder. And, like, the freeholder wanted 30 grand and they wanted 15 grand in legals as well. And, like, to be honest, it's one of those where we, like, I don't know, I can't even remember how much we knew about that until we bought it. We knew a little bit. So much on the job learning, you know, just getting all that legal technicality of new leases from a freeholder that doesn't really care, and then dealing with the planning and the postcodes and the services and, like,
the hard yards,
just stuff you haven't got a clue about, you know. And we made money in that, we sold that, and then we wanted to do something bigger, and, you know, we found these projects, and it was when PD was big, and what's quite actually the common theme. They're all basically in the same block I live in. There's an office space in the block I live in, and it was a PD scheme to create 4 or 5 flats. And you thought, like, no one knows this better than us, right? No one knows these figures better than us. We've done 2 projects in this building already. And like, this is going to be the catalyst for one of us to quit our job and set up the business. And I was like, look, Charlie probably was getting paid more money than me at the time. He had a slightly more senior job. He had I guess a girlfriend or wife, can't remember. You know, bit of a bachelor lifestyle. So I'll take the risk, you know, like I will do this. I'll quit my job. So we basically, how can I put it? We bought something and we thought we knew more than we did. That's the reality
Classic.
of it. Yeah, like because we were like, oh, we've done these projects. You know, I've done like 3 or 4 houses together now. We made a bit of money. We can go bigger.
Yeah.
And it was like £1.1 million purchase price, and we put down a deposit. And we went to get development finance. We already arranged development finance. And what happened was we were remortgaging on 2 of our other flats. And the day we got accepted our offer on this thing, we put exchange down, Brexit happened. Literally the same day. Well, that can't be that bad. And our other 2 flats got devalued where we're getting all that equity on. And cut a long story short, it was basically, I'd already quit my job and went into this project. And Charlie, you know, we were meeting once a week. Charlie, bless him, like getting up at 6 a.m, doing 2-hour breakfast meetings with me before he did his long slog and practice. And for about 6 months, we thought we can do it and legally do this, try and buy it. And essentially what happened over the time, we lost our deposit. So we lost a 6-figure sum because the finance didn't work. And, you know, we thought, of course, the finance company have told us they're going to do it. They're going to do it. And, it doesn't work like that.
Doesn't work like that.
We didn't know any different. And I actually remember vividly that when we bought it, we had a really great solicitor, Sarah, worked in like kind of Central London practice, and her and her boss came and got me and Charlie in for a meeting. They're like, you sure you should be buying this? Because like, look, you know, they've got risks on this, there's risk on this and this. Me and Charlie, like, yeah, of course. We're like, we know what we're doing. Like, of course. We're like, yeah, we know. And essentially what happened that year was we lost the biggest sum in property we've ever lost in our first ever deal.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a nightmare. And, you know, like depressing times because it's kind of on your shoulders, right? Every night you're going to sleep and like, it's at a time in your life where you don't have much money. But what I would say is probably the best thing that's ever happened to the business, and hindsight, because when you lose some money, you never want to feel that feeling again. And you will not become complacent about things you don't know. If I don't know something now, I'm going to ask other people. I'm going to find like the best knowledge on that certain element of it. And also, you got to...
Just interrupting this episode to let you know that in the show notes, you will find a link to a free deal appraisal calculator. It's a buy, rent, refurbish, refinance calculator that I built. I used it over 550 times to find the first few high-yielding income-producing assets that I bought, and it gives you every single cost that you need in there to make it super granular. It also calculates your finance costs, and you can manipulate and tweak the LTGDVs up and down, the arrangement fees, the interest rates. You hit update model, and it will tell you how much cash you are going to make on a monthly basis, as well as your return on capital employed. It also has a section for your incurred monthly expenses if you're doing service accommodation or HMO where all bills are inclusive. It's really comprehensive. I use it myself, and I want you too to use it. Now, back to the episode.
There's a few things behind the scenes in it, right? And you come out from an architecture background, everyone's quite trustworthy. You get into property and it gets a bit more sharky, right? In reality.
Yeah.
So you get to not be so trustworthy of people and certain things going on. But I think losing money can really, it's like sink or swim, right? You're either going to quit, that's it, we're done. Or you're going to be like, I've got my pride here. I believe in us. I believe we can make a business out of this. So we spent the next year and a year probably trying to find the perfect deal, which was just me in the business. Charlie had a full-time job, which is kind of running around like a headless chicken, going to every auction, you know, doing the figures on so many things, talking to investors, networking, ridiculous amount of evenings, trying to meet other developers.
That's where we met at a networking event one evening.
Where we met, you know, doing grinding, learning coffees and pints and who knows what they're talking about, who doesn't. And essentially, like, we're kind of running out of money, right? Because, like, this perfect deal doesn't really exist. You know, we'd work stuff out. And then what I ended up doing was doing a bit of consultancy work. I was like actually quite good at like working out figures for developers, like doing sketches, like, you know, architecture background. So we'd done a bit of networking, so other people were paying us a couple of grand here for stuff. And then what I realised, I went to all these auctions and I thought, there's a lot of people at auction that don't really know what they're doing. So to go to auctions, I made these flyers saying Caswell Dainow consultancy, and you're not allowed to, couldn't afford like a stall in the auction. So just hang in like reception, just give them out. So I used to do it for like every auction. So for months, I used to make like enough money in the business whilst I was looking at properties.
Doing consultancy.
So what that meant would be like, we could do loads of drawings on a building or a site they wanted to buy, work out all the figures and work out planning risks. So it's kind of like a deal analysis. And you're learning doing it and getting paid to do it.
Excellent.
So just randomly learned to do that, kind of being entrepreneurial. Didn't find the perfect deal. And I'll be honest, it was like, we were spreading ourselves too thin, you know, looking at like house to flats is our background. I guess what we've done, land stuff with planning, and like it's just too much knowledge to really take on.
Yeah. And what year was this round?
I think it's like 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, and houses to flats were getting harder and harder because before 2010 they were pretty good. Everyone was doing it everywhere, but after that, it started to get a bit thin on the ground in terms of opportunity.
Tough to do, and you know, like you're just looking at too many things. You're just not laser focused. And then I'll be honest, it was probably getting to the end of like, you know, like I don't know if we're going to find the right project. And I saw something on the market with estate office and a guy called Freddie, who's now become a really good friend.
Yeah, we know Freddie.
He lives in LA now, living the life in LA. And it was in Croydon, and it was a house, like a disused house, completely run down. But the unique thing about it had like a really unusual garden. And I went to see it and I just thought, I can do something with this garden. I can split the house into flats. And I think I can get planning for 2 houses in the garden. Every other developer looked at it and just thought, I don't know about this garden. I don't know if we can do anything. Maybe a studio or something. And I think the confidence of all those years of, you know, deal analysis and other deals and seeing stuff.
Looking at what other people's doing.
Other people doing, learning and absorbing.
Yeah.
And your architecture mind of like thinking creatively. Like I backed myself and said, Charlie, I think this is it. I think this is the one we've got to do. And we bought it cash. So we got all the cash we had left. We got like 3 investors. And we bought it cash, right? And the key to it was getting planning to split the house into flats straight away. And we got a really nice scheme on it. And then we sold the house and we owned the land for free. We paid off our investors. Didn't make a profit then. We had this piece of land for free. And this is when we did all the house and design in-house. We didn't have any, you know.
Yeah.
So went to help us with the drawings, went to people I worked with and practices and paid them an hourly rate to do the drawings and 3D modeling and stuff. And we got planning for 2 houses. And on the land we got for free. And we sold it. You know, didn't get top money, but we got decent money for it. And I was just like, this is it. This is what we're good at, and this is really enjoyable. Like, I don't really want to like be on site again. We refurbished houses in the past. Like, you know, spending time in B&Q is like, it's not really.
You know what I find B&Q is one of the two. Is either you love it, and there's some people that really enjoy going to B&Q. My dad being one of them. My father-in-law another. And there's some people that absolutely don't enjoy it at all, which is me.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like when you realise you can sit in a trendy coffee shop or restaurant, like in London, and like do these drawings and like work out these figures and like do it all remotely, and go to site. Like at least you went to that site twice the whole time.
Wow.
Got built out, really cool project, you know. And I think that was the inspiration for us to be like, there's something in this, and it's actually enjoyable. You know, like they've got to do some really quite out there design on the garden, probably a bit too out there, and build cost wise in reality. That was the key. That was the turning point there. And I actually remember the site was being sold by quite a famous property developer, and he couldn't believe what we got planning for. And I went and met him in his office in St. John's Wood. He's like, fair play. I did not think you'd be able to do that. Like, I would have kept it if I thought you could do it.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have. And then and that was the first one. And then you thought, right, so because you have a great reputation for kind of infill sites, rear of gardens, and you went on a bit of a roll with that.
Yeah, I think we doubled down. I mean, that was when Croydon was hot. You know, that was Croydon. Planners were up for surf. So we bought a couple of things in auction. Bought something in auction. This funny story actually happened from that. The next project we did was round the corner. I remember I was being on a holiday. I got this call with a random guy. And he was like, "Oh, I've got some land around the corner. I want you to be our architect." And I was like, "Look, we don't really do that. We're the developers, right? Even though we did the design in that. So we said, oh, what do you think of these plans? I was splitting this house into flats. And I said, look, I'll just advise you for free in the flats. Like, I sketched over the plans, so look, that's like that. But the garden, I'll do a deal with you on. I can get planning, I can get Deuce a deal on the garden. He's like, great. We did a JV, and it was on an email contract. When I met him for coffee, I trust him, he trusted me. Did a email contract, and we got planning for a 2-bedroom house on the land. We split the profit on it.
Wow.
And then we bought stuff in auction in Croydon again, mental site. They were like the most craziest access ever. Everyone thought we were crazy, like trees. And that was the first project we used external architects on. We're like, look, I think it was a debate between me and Charlie. I was probably a bit cautious. I felt a bit like Caswell and Dainow brand will be like devalued if it's then this architect doing it. And I was quite wrong. Charlie was like, no, like, we're the developer, right? We've got to start working with great architect practices, and it actually increases our brand, and it's going to be more enjoyable.
Right.
And he was right, and start working with architect practices on it, and it's so enjoyable. Sitting there and getting presented to by architects, what it used to be. Now you're the real client, like people are paying to present.
You're on the side of the desk that you wanted to be.
Yeah, like before you like half and half, you're designing, you're doing it, you put money in, and then we didn't want to build out. We realised very early on that it's so complicated getting planning. We really want to get our knowledge like super hot on planning. And also like building out, man, unless you've got your own builders or your own QS, or you've come from that background, of course we've been on site as architects. Of course we've done that. But we're not like the ones getting our hands dirty.
Yeah.
And I think the best builders are really the people who come from a trade.
I agree.
They're
100%.
like, they know it. They know who they're to use and everything. And
they got their one trade, and then they're like, then they know how everybody else works, and they've kind of been through the whole cycle. I agree.
Exactly that. And so that did well. We sold that, and then we had another project. I won't go into all the projects. We had another project that didn't do so well because we bought an auction, and Croydon changed their planning policy as we bought it. That's life, right? That's another lesson learned, is that you can't predict the unpredictable. I didn't know Croydon were going to change their planning policy.
Yeah.
I didn't know Croydon were going to...
And that's mid-application?
Yeah, mid-application. Basically, they changed the policy, and when we bought a corner site, we bought a bungalow, we bridge and finance. It worked out okay in the end. We didn't lose money, luckily, because we're quite clever how we bought it. But policy can change,
And that's it. That's a mid-deal, which
you
can't. So the more you scale, like if you're doing 10 of them, and suddenly they could all go wrong.
And I think that's the reality. We were going one deal to one deal at the time. And then when one deal doesn't go right, you're like, that's a salary.
Yeah,
we need that. And then what we kind of realised was less land was coming into auctions. And you check Rightmove, all that stuff, and all your agents phone you up about stuff. And I was like, we got to get to this land before it gets to an agent on auction. So we started learning a bit about letter sending. I watched a few YouTubes, obviously like Paul Higgs is massive in that scene. Kudos to him. I probably watched one of his YouTubes. Never done any training in my life, but I thought, I'm a bit of a self-learner. So I'm going to learn this. And I thought, I talked to Charlie about it. I was like, I think there's something in this. We can identify, because over the years, Charlie and myself have been identifying land, just like on Google. So Charlie go running, whatever, I'll be on my bike. I had a list on our phone of all these random bits of land that we just thought might be interesting.
And is this before or like land insight and Nimbus and all that?
Just before this was doing architecture. This was like literally like in architecture careers. We're just fascinated by small plots of land. And at university, the most interesting projects for me were always the small sites. Like someone showed me a big tower and like whatever. You show me like a small site, I find it fascinating how like design unlocks it. And I think that's where you get the best design from when you've got the most constraints, because it's not obvious what you have to do with
100%.
it. So we'd kind of build up a little bit of a database in-house. And I was like, right, how can I find more land? So what I realized is for free, you can go in Land Reg and you can find red lines around stuff and then pay, back in the day, £3. So like no Nimbus, no land. So for weeks, I'd just be on like the most clunkiest software. It's just like, that's a red line. Then write down the address of it. And I built up like a database of like stuff. And then I thought, wow, this is going to take some time here, right? And then I was like, how can we, then we learned a bit about software. And we thought, okay, there's actually software can speed this up. But we need to invest in this. And we bought us a package. I started finding sites. but there's only so much you can do. And then I kind of spoke to Charlie about it. I was like, look, we've got something quite unique here because we've got a good connection to our university. And there's all these architecture students that kind of can make some money in their part-time rather than working in a local bar or a local restaurant. And we can teach them about development and design. So what we actually did, well, actually our first employee during this time reached out to us, a guy called Sam, who's doing his master's at architecture school, reached out and said, can I interview you for my dissertation? I said, yeah, cool. And fair play to him, he then asked to do part-time work for us. So he started working for us a bit, got paid to him. So that was our first employee before Charlie came full-time in the business, because it's a big risk taking 2 developers on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that's like
any business is a burden
like,
when you got 2 people to mouths to feed before you've got any money coming in.
Didn't have the money. We could take someone part-time. And what I realized was we need to build a deal flow before Charlie comes in the business. Yeah. So what we did was we put this advertisement up in our architecture school back in Sheffield. And we employed maybe 10 or 12 students. So in their part-time, they would find sites for us. We bought these licenses. I'd do like twice a week on my evenings, do this online coaching with them. I used to deal of the week.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Deal of the week, where every week the best, you pay them an hourly rate, and the best deal of the week are paying £50 on top of the hourly rate. Great if you're a student, right? And it's great for their CV because they like learning stuff.
Yeah.
So we built up a database of like thousands of sites over months and months. And then we're like, okay, we need to like send letters. Let's learn all about that. And a really good friend of mine, Jen, she's very good at like coding. And I kind of told her what I needed. Like I need to like take these sites to a database that site sends a certain type of letter to that landowner, because if it's a garage or garden. Yeah. And then we create this system. And then Charlie was helping out. We were working full time, these evenings, weekends. Like this created this like system of like find a site, it sends it a letter.
Wow.
We just started sending letters out.
How many letters are you sending out a week?
Oh, back in the day, probably like 300 or 400, 500 back in the day, like starting off. And then a lot of the sites on reflection, now what you know about planning didn't work, you know, because the access was a bit rubbish for that. But we started getting callbacks, you know. Like,
yeah, the phone starts ringing, you're like, oh my God.
Then what I realised was like, I can't answer these calls because I'm driving, I'm looking at a site, or I'm in a busy restaurant. It looks really unprofessional. So I'm like, right. So I found someone to take all the calls, and which was kind of a retired lady, lovely. And she took all the calls and did all the database and stuff. So he's like building up the business, like what is the business now, like cheaply, and testing ideas. Like the students were relatively cheap, testing ideas. It got to a point where we had a bit of a deal flow. And that was enough confidence with Charlie to say, look, Charlie, look, we've got some, I can't do this all by myself now. I need you in the business to help me with some of these sites to go and see. And like, we've got some of the deals very close. And legally it gets very complicated than like buying land. And also Charlie had come from like a very like, up until that point, it was all a bit like me working stuff out, like spreadsheets and like systems were just like, it was all, you know, like it wasn't that optimized. Charlie's very good at coming from like, he's running quite a big practice at the time, and like systems and processes and database, spreadsheets. I was like, look, Charlie, it's getting to the point where like, we need you. Like, I actually like, when you're going to really enjoy it, right? Because trust me, wait till you get to do this job. And 2, like, I need your help doing this stuff. Like, so, like he was doing evenings, weekends, helping. Charlie moved in the business full time. Probably a massive culture shock to him, right? Because, like, you know, you go from like being a somebody to a nobody again.
Organisation, right? And then suddenly actually there's nothing.
And then the first 6 months, you know, me and Charlie was working out how we work together. And it was brilliant. From there, like, we just doubled down on what we're good at, which is finding land, kind of not using agents too much, like straight to vendors, like working with amazing architecture practice. Then we started employing like 5-6 different practices at any one time on different sites, learning the art of the deal, how to negotiate in land. I mean, like legals, finding a really good solicitor, and understanding covenants and land and what you can trip you up, and how to like structure deals and stuff like that. All a learning curve, to be honest. And then that's what really grew into the business we are today, where there's 4 of us full time. We work across 6 or 7 sites at any one moment, sending thousands of letters, but also not just letters. We get people coming to us with land. We built a business where people want to work with us.
Got a brand now, isn't it?
Got a brand,
bring stuff to you.
And I think that's something I've been really key about from day one, is about the brands. Like, I was very lucky that in architecture, my last ever employed job was a design agency that did a lot of branding for high-end retail brands. And I just learned so much about branding and communication. So I think the brand has been really important to us.
Very good. Yes, I love it. I've kind of reached out to you about it before. It's very, very nice.
And I think to be honest, it makes you feel like a bigger company than we are. So people are quite surprised. There's just like 4 full-time employees. They're like, oh, I thought you were like bigger. So that's really enjoyable, like growing that and people knowing about you, and just learning, getting better at what you do. You know, Charlie and myself were both people, and like, yeah, design's a massive part of it. But a massive part of it is getting the best out of people. That's our staff, that's our architects, our planning consultants, and that's meeting landowners. And, you know, like they've got some serious value in their land, but you've got to be the person they trust with to buy that from them.
And to unlock all the value as well, which helps them get the best price as well. Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask you, but on the funding side, which is something that I'm kind of involved in, I get people calling me up asking me to help them with some sort of bridging finance for something with land without planning. One of the first things I always tell them is it's like super duper risky. You've got to make sure you've got an exit lined up, and it's like I kind of almost have to talk them out of it because I'm saying you're an adult. I'll let you do it if you want to do it, and I'll organize it for you, but it's really risky. How do you feel about it? Because I know that you mentioned actually one of the earlier sites you just bought at 100% cash. Yeah. Do you have any kind of philosophy with that?
Yeah, like look, obviously you've got an amazing background in finance, and you're dealing with you're lending on assets, right? Someone comes to you and you can secure it with land. Like, what are you lending on? Like hope value. So I think when people come to you and there's like a commercial building on there, like at least you can take a bit of charges. Yeah. With land, essentially, like what's a garden worth? It's worth willing what your neighbour's going to buy it from them. That's the real value of it, right? So I think it's really hard using finance on land. So we've always gone for our own money we've built up slowly in the business and investors' money. And when I say investors, I think people overcomplicate it. Like, I always say the money's in your phone. People go, oh, I've got no rich. I'm like, trust me. Like, you would not believe how many of your friends, like, great auntie died and left them 100 grand. They've never told you. Yeah. Or, you know, your friend who's in a random job has got like a 50 grand bonus. And they've been getting that for the last 10 years. They've never done nothing with it. You know, or your uncle or whoever it is, or someone you went to school with. So for us, it's like I think there's this big thing in property, but you've got to go into golf clubs and that. I'm like, no, I guarantee every single person, and sometimes they're tough conversations, right? Because nobody wants to go to someone they went to school with and who's like, they haven't spoken for a few years, or their friend and talk about money. But if you can prove to them that their money's safe and you can make them a lot more money in the bank, that's great. So we work with a handful of investors, not many, to be honest. And actually, other developers have lent us money because they trust us as a brand. And they're like, they've got nowhere to put their money. And they're like, they'd rather give it to us sometimes, or we'll JV on something. So that's been really important, I think. It's much easier to get money off someone who's already in property because they understand the risks. And we did some great JVs on some bigger sites. With
so do you do fixed returns, or do you do like first profit splits?
Like fixed, look, we're a business, right? I want to give away as little as possible, ideally. So I don't want to take risk with other people's money. So essentially, you know, gotta be careful what I say here because I know you can never act as a bank, so there's always risk. But I try and give people quite fixed returns on the money. You know,
that's your preference, right?
Yeah, I don't want someone to walk away in a year and be like, oh, I didn't do as well as I want. I want to know exactly what you can get. When it comes to equity, like if we do well, you do well. Even with that, we'll normally do guaranteed return. We've never really done a deal where like, if we do well, you do well. If we do bad, you make nothing, or you don't get your money
You still
back.
give them a minimum hurdle.
Yeah, it's never felt comfortable with us being like, your money's at risk, even though obviously your money can be at risk. Like the way we structure things is we always put a line share of our money in first, and investors help us. We like, sometimes it's cash flow. You know, we're working on 6 projects at a time. Forget about salaries and business costs and all that stuff. Just planning costs. You know, average planning cost per project might range from 35 to 150 grand. So you're talking 60 grand a project over 6 projects.
And what's that 150 grand being spent on?
Like 150 would be the max we'll spend. So
but like, 35 to 100, like what we can, so more or less the same, but it's like bigger reports.
So like 30 grand is like 1 to 2 units. And people are shocked by that. Like, oh, my mate can do it for like 500 quid. Like, those days are gone because the amount of reports you need. And also, we like to think we're working with the best practices. You know, the most enjoyable part of our job, right, is working with great architects. It's like people are much better designers than us. I'm out of ideas. We've run out of ideas, but people come to us with these amazing ideas. My job is to be like a curator where we get the best out of them, we sketch over it, we push and pull, we use our knowledge, but that's not going to look great, we'll do this. So working with great consultants. So like, let's use a typical one. Let's say 150 grand. Like, it's a lot of money, but that might be like 10 to 15 houses.
Yeah.
Where does it go? Well, planning costs. A pre-app might cost you 3.5 grand. There's normally 2 of those. Actual planning fees, 500-600 quid a unit. Maybe you've got 10 grand of just planning costs. You got your legals. You got 10, 15 grand of legals. Securing that land. Just before you've done anything, you're in for 20 grand on the big ones. Architects might be 30 to 50 grand on it. Planning consultants, 20. There's general site maintenance, just stuff you got to do, another 5 grand. And then the other 30, 40, 50 grand, whatever it is, it's other consultants. The amount of consultants reports you need on stuff now is outrageous. And they're all like 3 to 10 grand each, and you've got to use the best people because, like, you're risking so much money. It only takes one consultant who's not very good.
And the whole application falls down.
The whole falls apart. And it's that technical now. It's so technical on like singular elements. Your job as a developer is to like orchestrate all these things and like see the overview. And sometimes when someone's like, if you got 1 weak element, it can be massive.
Do you always go down the route of securing the asset, or do you do options, delayed exchange, delayed completions?
Yeah, so like, look,
subject to planning.
Look, cash is the killer in any business, right? So like, 100%. If I've got to buy a site for £1 million or £500,000 or 100 grand, whatever it is, I've got to come out my business, or I've got to find an investor to buy that with me, and then I've got to give them a massive share of it, right? If I can do an option on land and put no money down and then spend all our money in the 30 to 150 grand of planning costs, it's so much better for the business. So the number one is always option, but sometimes landowners, or sometimes we buy stuff from an agent or another developer, they're like, I'm not gonna wait a year, I want my money now.
Yeah.
And if the deal's good enough, you've just got to put the money down, right? So I'd say 60, 70% of our sites are options, the rest cash outright buy. De-risking things, I think, is important now. Like, I think sometimes now we're willing to, like, before we get into a legal contract, put 5 or 10 grand into a pre-app and try and get a bit of in from the planners before, because I'd rather lose 10 grand than waste the year and lose like 50 or 100 grand,
You were doing, I mean, it's scary numbers. Like, if that 150 grand planning application doesn't go to plan, that's just sunk costs gone.
Yeah, and that's it. So like it, like, the difference between an architect and a developer is like risk, right? Architecture education is generally quite risk averse because you're the one getting sued at the end of the day, and it's so complicated. So I get it, but when you put your developer hat on, you've got to take risks, right? Because you never quite know it's going to work out. All your years of learning and education and doing more deals, you get better, but no matter how old you get, how many deals you've done, you never actually 100% know it's going to work out.
That's such a scary approach to it. I find it quite. You got to know your shit. You got to know your stuff. You really got to be confident. But just the fact that the local council can change the policy halfway through, and you're 150 grand in.
So I think that's why.
How can you mitigate that?
There's certain things we do in a business. So the first motto is every day is a school day. Every day we're learning something. We always try to make the business better every day, whether that's website, branding, letters, systems, whatever we're doing. And the other thing is learning from others. So I think we're quite an open business. We're quite honest about figures and how we do with people we meet and what's good and what's bad in the business. And giving advice, we give a lot of advice for free. But on the other end of that is we meet a lot of people and we try and absorb. So we're always meeting new architecture practice for coffees, new planning consultants or new right-to-like consultants, whatever it is, and other developers. My diary is full of lunches and dinners and breakfasts with other developers as well as architects.
Right.
Because it's open book. So let's say, we're looking at a site in Ealing and then Roger there is a great developer. He's just done 6 houses in Ealing. Like, who's better to learn from? It's that knowledge of stuff that isn't on the website, but it's so key. By the way, Ealing, they're getting really touchy about garden sites. They want to create double what they want to do this, or in a few months' time they're about to do this. or architects going, I've just done a pre-app in Lewisham. They're not allowing that type of site anymore.
Wow.
Now, unless you're fully immersed and fully open to keep learning, like you're not going to know that stuff. So we always, like, the amount of stuff I learned from like coffees and beers and glasses of wine and like that is where I learned, really.
Yeah.
You know, I've never done any property training courses. You're not really read any books.
How do you feel about property training courses?
Look, what can I say? We've done 2, to be fair. So like,
Which ones?
We've offered 2.
Oh, you have offered 2. And
Yeah.
actually, one of them, off the back of it, has done a successful planning application in Whitstable. We're doing the funding. We met them through you.
Exactly.
And they're absolutely wicked guys.
Wicked guys.
You've got a very good audience, I must
And look,
admit.
that's inspiring for us. So I think when we were a bit younger, there's so many architects that reach out to us, like Hadkin Developments. We thought, you know what, we'll do a couple of training days where 80% of the crowd were architects, day long, as you know, you were there at one of them, intensive training. And
it was a great day.
Like, it's pretty enjoyable doing it,
Very
giving
enjoyable.
back. But also, it's not business for us, right? The amount of time it takes to do all the slides, of course you make some money on it, but it's not like, you know.
Not life changing.
And also, there's a little bit of a danger, right? You can't teach too many people what you do, all your tricks. So there's been nothing left, no business for us. So, look, I think the right education is important. So, but I just think in the property education space, 80% are just wealth creators, right? So they could be selling crypto, they could be selling Forex, whatever it is. They happen to choose property because people want to make money. There's probably 20%, and I'll, shout out to Paul Higgs, like someone like that, who knows their shit, and I think's worth for people. Look, I think a lot of it's out there, and a lot of it is your mindset, right? I'm just inquisitive. I want to reverse engineer stuff, create little spreadsheets, and like read the planning applications, read the appeal statements. Charlie's the same, Sam's the same, who works for us. So if you're not lazy and you're willing just to get out there and just like learn and meet people for coffee, you can learn a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do property training, I'm going to say like most of them are absolute bullshitters.
The reason why I asked you, because I already knew that you'd say something like that.
Trying to be as politically correct as possible,
But it's good. It's people go on these courses, whether it be a university degree for 7 years and spend 100 grand, or they go and tell somebody that you're going to be financially free in 12 months if you give me 20 grand. One way or another, they've got pros and cons. And like you said, there are some good people out there that are doing some legit training. And you probably need to reach out to somebody like yourself to say, what do you think of this person? What do you think of that person? This episode is sponsored by Merry Oaks Property Finance Brokerage. Merry Oaks is a finance brokerage for investors, developers, landlords, SMEs across the country, helping you with all of your finance needs. So whether it's bridging, development, commercial, buy-to-lets, HMOs, service accommodation, industrial, hotels, the whole 9 yards, whether it's for your portfolio, whether it's for your business, we can support you. Please contact us. We've got the link in the show notes, and we look forward to hearing from you. Now, back to the episode.
And I think a lesson learned, like exactly what you just said there. I think talk about the first deal where I quit my job that went wrong. If actually it was been a bit more, I'll probably say slightly less ego, and didn't think we knew it all. And when I spoke to some more experienced developers, said, look, we're about to do this, they might have said, look, that's a massive red flag there. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we would have been a bit more open book and said, look, here are the figures, here's this. Oh, like, okay, we couldn't predict Brexit. But they probably would have said, well, what's your backup plan if the finance company pulls out? Like, where are you getting this money from? And now we'd always have like an investor or whatever. So I think my advice is probably like, try and meet people for coffees. Like, I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn for advice. First thing I say, sometimes people are lazy. Like, how do you get into it? I'm like, let's Google the name. Like, we've given talks, there's YouTubes, right? Watch the YouTube of a talk we've given somewhere. Then, if you've got questions, give me your mobile number, and I promise I'll call you when I'm driving, because it's like downtime, you're driving to your site or a meeting. And I'll call you and answer, I'm happy to help. So I think if you reach out to people you like, I didn't quite realise that when I was younger. I thought they wouldn't want to talk, but actually...
Most people are quite helpful.
People are quite helpful. And I think, so if I was getting into property now, I would just try and maybe work for free for people, like just to try and absorb, and try and, there's certain things that people, if you're a really good restaurant, right, and you say to someone, you approach them on LinkedIn and say, look, I've got a lunch spot on me at this great restaurant, and it might cost you 200 quid, right? But most people go, oh, that's the hottest new restaurant in London.
I'll spend some time
and
with
actually,
you.
you only spend 200 quid at lunch, and you'll get like 2 hours of value out of it. So I just say, be clever about what you do. Or recommending people. I think really good way, someone young, is try and, let's say you want to work for a company or you want to meet someone. If you can help that person by saying, listen, I gave a shout out my social media to you, or, I went and found some people to help you with this or that, or I found this for you. Like, showing initiative is massive. And like, someone does that to me, I'm like, yeah, of course I'll meet you. Like, so impressive how you did that, like thinking of that clever way.
That makes sense. Going back to the planning very quickly, though, there's talking about Labour wants to build so many homes over the next kind of few years, so 1.5 million homes, and then they're doing all this reform to the planning policies and the way it works. Have you looked? I'm assuming you know all about that. And is it good? Is it positive? Look, I've heard mixed reviews.
Look, headlines are great, right? And like, we're lucky. We've been invited to a few government round tables, so it's nice to give our voice out there, planning round tables a lot. Look, headlines are great, and it's great to see planning put at the forefront, and it's a complicated process. But, the stats were last year, London needed to provide 90,000 homes. They provided 30,000. So it's woefully under. Is it going to happen? Yeah, but it needs to happen now. Like, there's some simple policies that could happen right now.
For example?
Committees have to go, right? Imagine any other industry where, let's try to think of an example. Let's say you're a cancer research drug for science, right? You spent 3 years on this new drug, and all the cleverest people in science and the government said, this drug's amazing, right? This is the drug. About to release it. And you go, oh no, you can't release it. Why? Well, Jill at the end of the road at 52, she might have an opinion on it. And also Roger doesn't even live at the end of the road, but he likes science. So I think he should have an opinion on it. You're going to sit in a council hall, actually, and there's going to be 100 people in the council hall. And they've read a bit of Facebook about science, so they might not want it. And then they're going to vote at the end if they think your drug's going to be good. Well, what's their background? They've got no background in science. And that's it. So we've had schemes that are fully supported by the council. They're like, this is exceptional design.
Yeah.
Gets the committee. It's got no cars. Yeah, because not everyone has a car. It doesn't policy. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Or it's too close to that house. It's not. It's 10 meters past the government legislation of what is close. For overbearingness, gets voted out. Or an idea of design. I don't like design. Yeah, but you're not a design expert. You can have
That's
an opinion.
That's the most subjective. Yeah,
you might not like my suit jacket. It's fine. I appreciate that. I don't live it either. But it doesn't mean you have the right to stop it.
Especially when we need to build more houses, and if other people,
and it's going to happen. It's going to happen, but it needs to happen quickly because at the moment it's painful. Planning is slow. I don't blame the planners. They're overworked. They need to get more planners in. They need to pay more money.
They've been saying that they're going to do that, but then where are all these planners going to come from? Are they train them up or what?
It's a joke. It's like, every borough gets like one new planner. Great. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of new planners. Right. It's got to be a bit more of a sexy job for them. It's got to be kind of PR span a bit more. Needs to be more money for them.
Maybe better paid, yeah.
But planners are great. Often, we meet planners who are like really design focused. There's some boroughs doing amazing things on small sites, guidelines. But, they can do what they want. But if it's going to get to committee and get voted out, good. So that's got to change. There's got to be a bit more flexibility in policy. Land isn't perfect. There's no square sites left. So we need planning policy to be a bit more open-minded about. We can't hit every target on every site.
Like net biodiversity gain.
It's impossible. Like you can choose. Like, do you want that to be some rubbish grassland and an old bush with some old cans of Coca-Cola in it, or do you want it to be houses? Like you got to decide.
Would you pay a little premium to get guaranteed that your application
triple? I pay triple.
Really?
All my planning fees. If you can guarantee within X amount of weeks,
because that'll afford the better wages and the more planners and more.
Put more money into it. I'll pay any developer. I think homeowners, fair enough, different. They're not doing it for money. Keep the fees the same. Planning should be split to like homeowners, big sites, medium, small.
That's a good one.
Your planning officer, you specialise in 1 to 9 or 9 to 50 or 50 to 100 or homeowners. That's it. AI can do a lot of this homeowner stuff, right? A lot of it. So I want to talk to a specialist who really gets the nitty-gritty of that. Triple the fees, I'm fine with that. But we've got to get response within X amount of time.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't keep having extensions.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the whole point. That would be the point of it. So you pay for it.
Yeah.
You know that you're going to get it on that time. I think that's a good one as well. So I think removing the committees, doing that, hopefully that'll happen soon. Tech, you mentioned the AI word. What about how is that helping you? You got things like Searchland and Land Tech and Nimbus Maps and all these things.
Yeah.
Do you use all these tools?
Yeah, we use Nimbus. Shout out to Nimbus. There's lots of other good ones I know. Look, weirdly,
I'm an ambassador for Nimbus as well, so good shout.
Weirdly, we use that less now because we got quite a good database of sites we found. So a lot of our deal flow is through following up on sites we're close to on, or we sent letters years ago on. And it's constantly churning. So when it's finding new sites, look, we're really open-minded to AI. We look at a few things. We're really open-minded to a system being like, here's Adam, here is 500 sites, and they're all perfect. The reality is there's so much knowledge. It's not factual of like this site. It's not a tick box. It's subjective of like overbearing. Or that site might work, but actually that church feels too close to it. Or the heritage officer's not going to like that. Or that tree's going to block too much light. Or reality, there's a covenant on that land. AI can't, like so many sites have covenants on them. You can't legally do that. So look, I'm open-minded. AI, brilliant. I want to do less, of course. Like the more that can help us, great. Massively open-minded for it to help us, and I would love it to help us with site finding. But at the moment, it's still quite manual.
You mentioned that you're on site at any one time with like six, and you started off doing these lovely, beautiful infill. But I've seen you now doing larger and larger and larger schemes. Is that intentional, or is that just because of the nature of the business? You've got overhead, you have to do larger schemes to make them work, or
I think it's a bit of a confidence, to be honest. Like I think we've always tried to stay in our lane. Like we think we learned early on, like don't grow too big. Like so, I think early on, like a lot of developers make the massive mistake. They do a couple of units and they go straight to 20 or 30. Like it's another world, right? It's literally another world.
I do agree.
So I think we've slowly got bigger what we do. But we still love the single houses. And I think also we probably know our limit. So up to like 15, 20 houses is our sweet spot. Because above that, it gets a bit of a numbers game. And we always want to put design first. The most enjoyable thing, right, is having a site, the right size where we can like be really playful with the design and create new communities, do something interesting. As soon as you get to the really big stuff, it's like, it can become a bit more like a numbers game. So for us, it's like, what do we enjoy? And we have to do bigger sites, I guess, because of cash flow. But there's a limit.
Very good. Well, I've grilled you on many things, land planning, development, and there's a lot more as well. I didn't even check my notes too much. But I'm going to go through a quick fire round.
Oh, okay.
So what was the first thing you thought about this morning?
Do I take the train or do I drive here?
And what did you choose?
Drive, because there was a site I realised. It's all about working out your time, right? I realised if I drive, I can do an hour meeting with my staff and Charlie for like team meeting, Friday meeting for an hour driving on call. And I could go and see a site which is not a million miles away. I wanted to go and see that we've been talking to the landowner about. So car was the right solution.
Did you meet the landowner?
No, I just went and saw it. Normally do, but didn't have time. Just wanted to go and see it.
Is it a winner?
I'd say 50-50 in that one. I normally go with gut feeling. I normally see something and go, that's going to work. To be honest, my gut feeling in that one is probably, I don't think it's going to work.
Fair play. What did you have for breakfast?
I had a smoothie, which was banana, protein, not chicken. Sorry, my head's gone. Strawberries.
That's what you want next. I think.
Strawberries, blueberries, oat milk, protein, basically a protein
very,
smoothie.
Very healthy.
The older I get, I have to be. I'm trying to be a bit more healthy in the last few years.
I'm trying my best too, mate. I'm trying my best. What is your favourite emoji?
Smiley face. I think I'm quite a positive person. I think when I write things, I often trying to think what I'm expressing at the time. It's often like a smiley face.
I agree with you. If you had to ask me a question, what would you ask me?
I've got a question for you. So you've worn a lot of hats, right? Property, finance, and that.
Estate agent.
You've worn a lot of hats. What would be your dream out of all the things you do? A lot of things right at the moment. What would be your dream thing to do? Is it something you do at the moment, or something slightly different in property?
Within property.
Yeah, within property. Yeah,
within property. You know what? Growing up, I always wanted to be an estate agent and/or developer, and those are my two things. And it's interesting that I've gone down the estate agency route. being the broker, which I really do enjoy, but now doing it on the finance side, which I think suits my lifestyle a little bit better. I'm not going in and out of houses with keys and all that all the time, which I found a little bit annoying. If I could do anything, it would probably go back to being a developer. The only problem, and I still do my own smaller scale developments, all sub 1 million. But I have also got a little bit tired of getting on site with builders and all that side of things. So paper exercise stuff. So right now, for the last year and this year, I haven't bought anything. I've been focused on the finance brokerage. And next year, I'll start looking at the investment portfolio, and I'm going to do, I guess, developers again, because you're considered a developer, but you don't build out. Yeah. But you're still a developer in my eyes, because it's part of the whole value chain to be able to get something to build out. But then you can be like a property investor where you're adding value. So my next year, I'm already started looking at stuff which is commercial. Yeah. And I want to take basically vacant commercial properties and then find a really, really good tenant with a good covenant. So I'll buy it on a vacant possession around a 10% yield, but by the time I put a really good tenant in, it'll be worth 7-8% yield, refinance it, and then go again and sit on the long-term income. Yeah,
that's it. I think that's it, isn't it? Like using all your knowledge over all the years to be like double down on like this is.
That's where I'm comfortable in an office. Yeah. I'm not comfortable on site. I don't know my way around planning. Yeah. I've already tried that and lost. I've done a lot of PD stuff, which is great. Anytime I've gone down full planning, it's been a nightmare and lost 20 grand on one occasion. So yeah, I think that it suits me. I can do it from remotely from a nice coffee shop. I don't have to go B&Q. And then the income, I like being a landlord. I like the long-term income. Yeah. I like the long-term capital growth. But I'm tired of residential as well because you've got the Renters Reform Act. And in general, there's just so much regulation around it nowadays. I'm not against it. I think the living standards should be higher and everything. And I've got a portfolio that does that. But now as I go into the next phase, because I've done a whole bunch, it's commercial landlording.
Sold.
Good question. All right, so what is the best bit of advice that you've ever received?
I think it goes, I'm going to go back to like lots of advice, right? So I think the key about advice is absorbing from lots of different people. So I think when I've ever worked for practices, I've always got quite close to the directors and all of the practices. Yeah. And that's it. Like you've got to get yourself, whatever is socially going for beers, whatever it is to get there, and you'll get you've almost got to put yourself in that position to get advice, what I'd say. It doesn't just come to you. People just don't tell you these famous quotes, right? So for me, it's more about how to get in positions where you can learn from other people. And I'd say also just go back to my parents, like my all my success, so I give to my dad and my late mom. My mom passed away a few years ago, but she's so creative, and like that support and that creativeness when I was younger, and like she was such a people person, like being able to communicate and get on with people, it was massive. And that like the full support of my dad the whole way through, like helped me so much, like all the years when I was younger. And like I think for me that's massive. That's one of my biggest like kudos I'll give to my parents.
Fair play, mate. Yeah, my dad always told me hang out with your managers. Don't be like the kid at school that wants to hang out at the back of the bus. Go and hang out with the managers and they'll pull you up. And it really worked. It really did work. Fair play. And what's the worst bit of advice you've ever received?
Probably going back to like career advice, actually thinking when I was like 14, I went to like career advice at school and I told them I wanted to like be an architect. And they said to me, oh, you got to do like physics and maths. And I was just like, what? I got good grades. So I wasn't actually good at those things. I was just blowing my way to get A's on them. I thought, what? Is that right? And yeah, you need to do physics and maths. It's a complete lie. You don't need anything.
Smells more like a rocket scientist.
Yeah, like you don't need anything. Like that's a perception, right? And when you're like 14, some people would have been like, okay, I've got to go and do this. The rest of my life might be based around that. Like, when I was like, had enough kind of self-confidence to be like, I'm going to do a bit of research. That sounds like bullshit. But I guess that, and I think not that I know, I haven't got a very good memory about quotes, but I do remember something I read when I was younger, which is the Paul Arden book, which is, it's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. And I think there's something really good in that. Like, I think over the years at university, I've met people from like wealthy backgrounds. So we sure, backgrounds you can never dream of in life and business, in property. Yeah. There's all these people that are doing really well, but it's quite easy to do well. And you've had a £20 million property portfolio given to you to start off your career, right?
Does help. Like Donald Trump had a small £1 million loan that was like in the 70s.
It's like there's so much smokes and mirrors of people who are successful. And I think something about that quote really resonates with me. It's like, it's the drive. Like, like just not giving up and just being so laser focused on this, like this thing you want to achieve. That's going to, for me, outweigh talent.
Hard work outweighs talent.
Yeah. I
agree. If people want to reach out to you and find you, what is the best way to catch you?
We're pretty big on Instagram. So, that's where we're most vocal, I'd say. So Caswell and Dainow. LinkedIn, Adam Dainow. I'll try and answer questions where I can. Give us a follow on Insta. Look at our website. Personal Dainow one, if you've got more maybe like career focused question, also happy. If you don't want to go to the business one, happy to answer questions. And I think, look, we're always trying to do more deals. So someone's maybe got lands and they don't know what to do with it. Reach out to us. We can advise. We can JV you on it. And also consultants. We got quite a lot of deals now coming from architects who they want to work with us, and then maybe they've got a deal that's fallen out of bed with another developer, or they know something. Just chat to us. We'll have a coffee and we'll see if there's some work we can do together.
Yeah, I mean, I follow your Instagram and it is really, really cool, really fun, but really, really professional. And it's incredible, some of the designs and some of the spaces that you're creating. And you've seen a bunch of the stuff build out over the years, right?
Yeah. It's lovely to see. And as I say, look, I'll take my hat off. A lot of that is because we get to work with amazing architects who do lots of work.
It's always a team game. It's
great. Yeah, it's great. It's really inspiring to see. And I think the nicest part of my job is sometimes when I'm out at something and someone comes over, a young architect, and goes, "Hi, I know who you are, and I love what you do," and I have a good chat with them. And they want to get into property, and like to me, that is just like
the Cora guys. So we're working with some guys. We actually made a YouTube video on my personal page, doing a site visit, going to Whitstable, and I met them on that time that I came and did a talk about finance to all your guys, and they look up to you, and they're kind of going in those footsteps, and they did some really cool stuff.
It's nice to see like people doing good design led stuff. That's what it's all about for us. Love it.
We'll do this again sometime, Adam. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.